I was never one to believe in the supernatural. I prided myself on skepticism, dismissing ghost stories and cryptid sightings as figments of overactive imaginations. But something happened years ago, something that still lingers in the deepest corners of my mind, clawing at my sanity whenever I dare recall it. It was late one night in my teenage years, in a town so small and remote it felt forgotten by the world. My house at the time backed into an endless field that stretched for miles, bordered by distant, looming mountains. Civilization was scarce beyond that emptiness. My best friend lived next door, his house standing eerily alone at the end of an unfinished cul-de-sac, an aborted attempt to expand the town, now just another ghostly void in the landscape. I spent many nights at his place, avoiding my own home for reasons that no longer matter. It was during those nights that we began to notice something wrong. Every so often, we would wake to a strange noise outside his basement window, a dragging sound, a grotesque, gurgling wheeze that clawed its way through the silence of the night. We were never brave enough to check at first, but when we finally did, there was never anything there. The noises came and went for years, a sickening anomaly we tried to ignore. But one night, one awful, unforgettable night, it became something more. My friend was preparing to move away, and we planned to make the most of our time left. We stayed up, drowning in video games and old movies, trying to shake the unspoken dread that always seemed to linger in that house. Around midnight, we decided to go for a drive. Just a casual cruise with music blasting and a last chance to make good memories before we left. We climbed into his truck and backed out of the driveway, headlights sweeping across the vast, empty field. And that's when we saw it. It crouched in the grass, illuminated in the harsh glare of the high beams. At first glance, it could have been a person, until you truly saw it. It was naked, contorted on all fours, its limbs too long, bending unnaturally as if its joints had been placed all wrong. Its skin was stretched thin over a emaciated frame, so pale it seemed to glow. But the worst part, the part that still haunts my dreams, was its face. Its mouth hung open, an abyssal void, its jaw slack and impossibly wide as if it had unhinged, like a snake preparing to devour its prey. And its eyes, black, bottomless pits, glistened in the light as it turned its head towards us. The moment it realized it had been seen, it moved. Not forward, not sideways, but backwards. It scurried into the field as if the world itself had been rewound, limbs jerking unnaturally as it melted into the darkness. For a long, suffocating moment, my friend and I sat frozen, bloodless, our hands shaking on the dashboard. We turned to each other, breath shallow, and without a word, we both knew we had seen the same thing. There was no denying it. We spent the rest of the night in his basement, guns within reach, straining to hear the familiar gargling and dragging that had tormented us for years. But the night was silent, too silent. I don't live in that town anymore, but sometimes I go back, and that field is still there, waiting, watching. Even when I can't see it, I can feel it. Whatever was out there that night never left, and I don't think it ever will. I've always felt that when people go out of their way to ignore the strange and unexplainable, It's because they've already seen something. Something so terrifying that denying its existence is the only way to make it fade from memory. Now, before we dive into story number 2, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. My current goal right now is 1,000 subs. Let's get me there. On with story 2. The night was heavy with silence, the kind that presses against your skin and sinks into your bones. The air was damp, clinging to my clothes as I slipped into the woods, my footsteps muffled by the soft earth beneath me. It wasn't a vast forest, just a small stretch of trees surrounding a reservoir, nestled within the city's outskirts. A familiar place, a place where teenagers went to escape, to drink, to smoke, to feel free. I was no different. I parked at the entrance of the trail, the glow of my car's headlights briefly illuminating the skeletal branches ahead before I shut off the engine. The walk to the campsite was short, no more than 5 minutes, but with every step, the darkness around me thickened. The usual sounds of the night accompanied me at first. The distant chirping of crickets, the occasional rustle of unseen creatures moving through the brush, comforting in a way. At the site, I wasted no time setting up. A small fire crackled at my feet, its golden light licking at the trees, casting long, shifting shadows. I settled in, preparing to roll a joint, the rhythmic motion of my hands steadying me. The warmth of the fire was a fragile barrier against the chill creeping in from the woods. Then I heard it, something moving behind me. 4 legs, light steps, cautious but deliberate. My breath hitched, but I didn't panic. Probably just a coyote. Maybe just a stray dog. But then the sound changed. A shift, a weight redistribution. The unmistakable cadence of bipedal footsteps crunching against the forest floor. My fingers froze mid-roll. The air around me turned thick, suffocating, pressing down on my chest. And then silence. The crickets, the birds, even the wind through the trees, all of it was gone, as if the night itself had been smothered. The only sounds were the crackling fire and my own shallow breathing. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I stayed rooted in place, forcing myself to stay still. If it was an animal stalking me, I needed to show no fear. If it was something else, I swallowed hard and forced out a greeting, my voice small and uncertain. "Hello, anyone there?" Nothing, just the silence, stretching on for what felt like an eternity. Then a voice. "Can I bum a light?" It was wrong. The tone was too flat, too rehearsed, like a parrot mimicking human speech. The firelight flickered, casting erratic shadows as my heart pounded against my ribs. I tried to sound casual, tried to convince myself this was just some creep lurking in the woods. "Sure," I called out, "but you gotta come where I can see you. You're giving me the creeps, dude." No response, just the same question again. "Can I bum a light?" Then again, 3 times. My pulse roared in my ears, drowning out any rational thought. Something was deeply, horribly wrong. A cold dread settled in my gut as I pushed myself to my feet. My muscles coiled tight, ready to flee. My voice came out sharper this time. "Get lost. I'm not playing this game." And then it ran. Not on 2 legs, but 4. The sound of its limbs pounding against the ground was fast, frantic, and inhuman. My breath hitched as the tension in the air lifted. the night's natural symphony returning all at once. The crickets chirped again. The wind rustled through the leaves. The oppressive weight lifted from my chest, but the feeling of being watched never faded. I forced myself to move methodically, packing up my things, dousing the fire, doing everything I could to appear calm. I refused to run. Running could trigger something, an instinct, a chase. My mother had always warned me to make a scene if I ever felt unsafe, to fight if I had to. I clenched my knife in my pocket, my fingers slick with sweat. Every step down the trail was agony, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end, an electric charge buzzing beneath my skin. Then I saw my car. Relief flooded me. I was almost there. Just a few more steps and I'd be safe. And that's when I looked back. Standing in the middle of the trail, no more than 40 feet behind me, was a deer. But it wasn't right. It stood on its hind legs, perfectly still, watching me. The firelight had long since died, but the moon cast just enough glow to illuminate its unnatural posture. The way its limbs hung stiff and unnatural, as if it were wearing its own skin, like an ill-fitted costume. My breath left me in a choked gasp. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I didn't stop until I was at my car, my hands fumbling to lock the doors before I turned the key. I didn't dare look up as I peeled out of there, my tires kicking up dust and gravel. It wasn't until I was miles away that I finally let myself breathe, my entire body shaking violently, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I never went back to those woods, never went back to any woods. Even now, the thought of being surrounded by trees, of the dark pressing in from all sides, makes my stomach turn. For years, I tried to rationalize what I saw. Maybe it was just a trick of the lights, an illusion born of fear and paranoia. But then I stumbled upon stories from people who had seen things, heard things, stories about creatures that could mimic voices, that could wear the skins of animals, that could watch you from the shadows. I don't know what I encountered that night, but I know it wasn't human. This story is undeniably eerie, but then again, any tale involving a skinwalker is bound to be unsettling. There's something about this one that feels strangely calm, yet deeply terrifying at the same time. If I've ever found myself in a situation like this, knowing that something unseen was watching me, I don't think I could keep my composure. But that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed both stories. If you did, don't forget to leave a like on the video, it really helps out. And if you're not subscribed yet, I'd truly appreciate it if you joined the channel. Lastly, if you have a story you'd like me to narrate, feel free to drop it in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe out there.